Hey guys, this is Al. I'm posting this video to give you directions on how to build a simple Solow model on your computer in Excel. You'll need to build this model in order to complete the questions on the problem set that I'm posting later on today. Now, when you're building this model, so a few things to note. First of all, this is actually the first of two videos. In this first video, I'm going to show you how to set up the baseline model in which the economy converges towards a steady state. And in the next video, I'm going to show you how to add shocks to this model, which the goal of this adding these shocks is to simulate a business cycle fluctuation, such as the recession of the past few years in our simple economy. An important point is that I recommend all of you, when you're making this model in Excel, to use the PC version of Excel for this assignment. The PC version of Excel just works a little bit better, it runs a little bit better than the Mac version. And you should have this on your computer, but if you don't, just go ahead and access it at one of the computer labs on campus. All of the computer labs on campus have Excel. Okay. So now, so to set up this model, okay, so first of all, we need to understand that the Solow model tracks the accumulation of capital in the economy over time. And the change in this variable, the change in the quantity of capital in the economy, is the key variable. It determines the value of the other variables. Okay? And the way that capital evolves in this economy is according to this formula that I've written right here. And by the way, I'll make this text file that I'm showing here available to you via Piazza. This equation right here, equation number 1, okay, says the capital in any given period is equal to the capital in the previous period less depreciation. That's this term. So this is capital in the previous period less depreciation plus whatever new capital is produced in the current period. Now you go, how much new capital is produced in the given period? Well, that's given by our production function, which itself is a function of how much capital we have in the present period, times this parameter called the savings rate, okay, which describes how much of what our economy produces is in the form of new capital, is in the form of investment. Okay, that's all talking about things in general, okay. If you didn't follow that, don't worry about it. The way this model works will become very clear to you as you actually put the numbers in and start to build it yourself, okay. So go ahead and open Excel on your computer, okay, and I have it open already. Okay, and you can see that the first thing that we want to do is basically to just set up the skeleton of our model by inputting the names of the various variables, the various economic indicators that our model tracks. Okay, so going across, so here I am at step number 2. Okay, so open Excel and create the following columns, starting from this top left cell and then going over. Okay, so you see here I have period, which is just going to describe what period, what time the economy is in. Okay, capital, which is the value of capital in the economy, output, investment, consumption, and depreciation. Okay, so these various vital signs of the economy here are going to be tracked in these columns. Okay, and then here I skip a column, and then in column H I have the model parameters. Okay, so that's the savings rate, the level of technology, the level of diminishing returns in our production function, and the depreciation rate. Okay, and we're going to set these things right now. So go ahead and type these things into your spreadsheet. And then we're going to assign numerical values to them. Okay, and the numerical values that we're going to assign, and again, I'll talk more about the justification for these later, okay, but we're going to choose a savings rate of equal to 50%, a technology equal to 1, a level of diminishing returns equal to 0.5, and a depreciation rate of 0.05, that is to say 5%. Okay. Okay. So then, okay, we're gonna enter in the first period. We're gonna enter in the first period. Okay. So the first period will be period 0 in our model. And in our model, we need to start capital off at some initial value. The economy starts with some initial number of machines. Okay, so let's just say that we start with 100 units of capital, 100 machines. Okay, Now, then in this period, in period 0, these machines are going to be used to create production. Okay, we're going to take these 100 machines, we're going to combine them with raw inputs, which are not modeled in this model. We're just going to basically run these machines, okay, and we're going to produce a certain amount of output. Now, how much output are we going to produce? Well, that's governed by our production function. Okay, and here our production function is that, well, it depends how many machines we have, you see. And the way this function is set up is just like when we were looking at the production functions that had labor in them earlier in the semester. We're just going to assume that there are diminishing returns in the number of machines, okay, and that the overall function is given by a technology parameter times the number of machines raised to a power. In this case, that power is going to be 1/2. So in other words, our output in this period, so and this is the important part, okay, this is when we're going to code the actual model into Excel. I'm going to say the output, I'm going to select this cell, okay, and I'm going to say double click it, and then I'm going to say equals. Now, if you've never used Excel before, okay, what happens when you press equals is Excel says, okay, I'm going to get ready for a formula. And the formula that I'm going to put in is as follows, okay. I'm going to choose the technology parameter here, okay, and I'm going to multiply, that's the star key on your keyboard, okay, times, so I have the technology parameter, notice I clicked it and it automatically entered in that cell, I3, into the formula. So I click that, okay. So technology parameter times the amount of capital in the economy, which is 100, and then raised to the power, so I'm using this little, this is the shift plus 6 on your keyboard, okay, raised to the power of the this variable here, which describes how much diminishing returns there is in the economy. If I set this number to 0.5 or 1/2, which I currently have, then there's going to be diminishing returns. If the number were 1 or greater than 1, then there wouldn't be diminishing returns. Okay, but I've currently set it equal to 0.5. So here's my formula. Okay, and then we're going to press enter. Okay, and the value that you should get, so it's going to compute these numbers. It's going to say, okay, I'm going to do 1 times 100 raised to the power 1/2. That's the square root of 100, and that's equal to 10. Okay, so in this period, in our simplified economy, we run the 100 machines and we produce 10 units of output. Now this output right now, I mean, what is this output in the form of? Is this chairs? Is this hamburgers? Is this, diapers? Well, we're keeping it simple, right? This is a simplified model. Right now, this output is just, it's generic units of output, okay? But the point is, some of this output is going to be in the form of generic consumption goods, okay? It's, that represents all of the consumption that might occur in the economy in a given period, okay? And then some of this output will be in the form of new machines that will contribute to our capital stock next period. Okay, now this split between, okay, how much of our output is going to be in the form of consumption goods and how much is going to be new machines, okay, that's determined by this parameter here, the savings rate. Okay, and it's currently set to 0.5, which means that half of the output is in the form of new machines and half of the output is in the form of new consumption. Okay. Now this is not particularly realistic. In the real economy, most of our output is in the form of consumption. Comparatively little is in the form of investment. But again, we're keeping things simple, so let's just do 50-50 for now. So I'm going to say that investment is going to be equal to 0.5, this number, times output. Okay. So I'm just selecting those things, and then I'm going to press enter. Okay. And then consumption is what remains of output. So it's going to be output minus investment. So whatever units of output we don't invest, those are what we consume. Okay. And then finally, as we mentioned in class, each period a certain fraction of our machines are going to depreciate away. They're going to break because they've been used too much. Okay, so capital degrades over time. And the amount of capital which is going to degrade in this period is going to be given by our parameter here, the depreciation rate. So this guy is going to be equal to 100 units of capital times the depreciation rate. Okay, and I'm going to press enter, and that's going to be equal to 5. So 5 units of capital are going to depreciate away this period. Okay, so now that you've entered in all of those formulas, and by the way, if you enter in a formula, let's say you enter in, like you go in here and let's say you do something wrong, like you accidentally click somewhere else. Like let's say you do, you say plus and then you click the wrong cell. Okay, don't worry about it. If you press escape, it'll simply set you back to what it was before. So if at any point in entering in these formulas you make a mistake, just press escape. Okay. Now, there's one thing though. There's one thing that we need to change here. Okay. And this subject, basically, there's one more thing that we need to do. Okay, which is that when I fill this spreadsheet downwards, okay, so that is to say, like, let's say I have a different number for capital next period. So let's say I have 110. Okay, I would still want output to be, this formula, but with 110 instead of 100. That is to say, I would still want to multiply by a and raise the 110 to the power of 1/2. Now, ordinarily speaking, right, to do that, all I would need to do is I've already put in the formula in this cell, right, for output. All I need to do is drag that down, and it should be the new cell. Okay, in other words, the number here should just correspond to 110 units of capital plugged into the production function, just as this cell refers to 100 units plugged in. But you'll notice, okay, that it doesn't work. Like, if I look at what's here, notice that I have the level of technology and the diminishing returns coded incorrectly. If I look at this cell, you'll see what happened is it's shifted everything down one cell. So now this blue and this purple cell correspond to these next two parameters, whereas here they correspond to these two parameters. Okay, now this is a problem, right? Because we want this formula to update, but we don't want it to change the parameter values here. We want it to update over here for this green one, but not for this blue and purple one. Okay, so how do we fix this issue? Well, we're going to go in and we're going to change this formula slightly. What I'm going to do is for these cell references, okay, so for these references where I'm saying this is my level of technology, I'm going to select that cell reference, that I3 right here, and I'm going to press, here, let me zoom in a little bit so you can see more clearly. Okay, so for right here, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to press F4. Okay, press F4 on my keyboard, and notice it adds these dollar signs in, and what that does is it locks down that cell, so it never changes. Okay, I'm going to do that here, and I'm also going to do that same thing for this purple cell, which refers to my parameter for lowercase a. Okay, now I'm going to make that change in all of them. So anytime that I reference a parameter, I'm going to lock that parameter down so it doesn't change as I update these cells downwards. So here again for output, here I don't need to, this equation doesn't refer to any parameter, so I don't need to change anything. But here, notice we're referring to the depreciation rate. I want to select that and press F4, and then I lock that down. Okay. Alright, so then finally, let me delete this stuff that I had here. The last step, okay, so now that we've corrected our cell references, okay, the last step is to simply say that capital in period 1, in the period after the first period, okay, is going to be equal to our initial value of capital, okay, minus, so I'm going to select the period 0 level of capital, minus the amount of capital which is depreciated, okay, plus the amount of capital which is invested. Okay. I'm going to press enter. Okay. And then I'm going to update across. Okay, so I'm going to simply take this and sorry. I'm not going to update across. I'm going to simply take each of these numbers, okay, and copy them down. So in other words, I'm going to select all of these by holding down my mouse. Okay, I'm going to take this little, you guys see this little square there? If I mouse over it, my cursor changes from a big plus sign to a little plus sign. I'm just going to drag that down. Okay, so again, this cell, okay, is equal to the sum of capital in the previous period less depreciation plus investment. Okay, and then all these other cells, I'm just going to update the formula that I had in the previous cell. Okay, so now notice the output in this period is equal to 100 times the technology parameter raised to the power of A. Okay, so then I'm going to fill in a few more periods here. I'm going to fill in a few more periods, and then I'm simply going to drag down, and notice Excel understands that as I drag down, I just want this number to increase. So let's have a look. Let's look at 100. Actually, let's look at 300 periods. Okay, so we're going to go down to 300 periods. It doesn't really matter exactly how many you have. Okay, let me just go down here. Okay, so this would be 300 periods. Okay, and then now that I have these first two rows set up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this entire row. Okay, and I'm going to update downward. So I'm going to select this entire row, and I'm going to double click this little square here. Okay, and it updates downwards. Okay. All right. Now you might be wondering, okay, well, how come all these values are staying the same? Well, it's because, see, I chose these parameters in such a way that 100 is the steady state value of capital in this model. So in this model, if we start with 100 units of capital, okay, you can see that the amount which is depreciated away exactly equals the amount which is produced and subsequently invested every period. Okay, so in this, when you have 100 units of capital with these parameters, the amount of new machines which are being added to the economy exactly equals the amount that are depreciating away each period. Okay. Now, however, if I start with a different number, so I can change my starting value of capital now that I've coded everything in, right? So if I start with 50 units of capital, okay, notice that what happens is that I accumulate more and more capital until I reach the steady state value. Okay, so I'm converging towards having 100 units of capital. If I start with greater than 100 units of capital, if I start with 150 units of capital, the amount of capital in my economy diminishes towards the 100 figure, which is the steady state. Okay, so this is behavior that we saw in class last time.